A very good evening to all of you, and congratulations on this summit. I warmly welcome all the people who are here from far and near, and congratulate the Power Grid for supporting this venture. As we move ahead and think about the kinds of initiatives that are there for clean energy, what comes to mind is clearly renewable electricity. It does not meet the heat needs, but it certainly meets the electricity needs. Over the past few years, we have been worried about the fact that solar electricity during the day, when the sun is shining, wind energy during the times when the wind is blowing, provide us with electricity which is the cheapest electricity that we can get, at somewhere between 2 and 2.5 rupees per kilowatt hour. But as I said, that is when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. What happens at other times? During the past year, we have therefore, not just the past year, but for quite some time, we have therefore focused on providing round-the-clock renewable electricity. Initially, we focused on providing electricity which is renewables with 2 hours, then 4 hours, and then finally 6 hours, and then round-the-clock electricity. And therefore, that is 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours or round the clock was the amount of storage capacity that we had to build in order to meet the solar, in order for the solar electricity to provide, to power the storage, and then for storage the stored electricity to provide electricity during the time when it is needed. What was remarkable during the last year was that in 2024, there were 4 different tenders for round-the-clock renewable electricity, which resulted in prices of less than 5 rupees per kilowatt hour for the electricity. All of these tenders looked at a mixture of mixture of solar, a mixture of wind, and a mixture of storage to meet the electricity needs. This is important because what actually was done was that when the sun was shining, solar was being produced. When the wind was blowing, wind was being produced. That minimized the amount of battery storage, or actually storage, because 1 or 2 of the tenders looked at pumped storage, pumped hydro storage as the way of producing the electricity when needed. It is also remarkable that all of these 4 round-the-clock renewable energy tenders were for less than 5 rupees per kilowatt hour of electricity. Because in the same time, when we compare it with fossil fuel power plants that were made, the prices were more than 5 rupees per kilowatt hour, up to 5.7 rupees per kilowatt hour. This therefore leads to the conclusion, it leads to 2 conclusions. The first, of course, is will all new power therefore be built by renewables with storage so that they can store during the time when wind is blowing, when the sun is shining, and use the stored electricity at other times. But the second question also is, how did this happen? It is not overnight that it happened, but over a period of time. And I think it is important to focus on the 4 things that were important to make this happen. The first is a very strong political commitment over the years to building up our renewable electricity base. I see Dr. Bandyopadhyay there, I see Mr. Pant there, I see Professor Yadav there. all of them have been at the forefront of the efforts by the country to produce renewable electricity. And this has gone on for many, many years. We started off with the renewable electricity portfolio standards in 2003. When the Electricity Act was introduced in 2003, it built in the requirements that every distribution company had to buy a certain amount of renewable electricity in order to be able to provide it to its people, to the people in that jurisdiction. Yes, it was very costly. Initially, it was only wind that came in. Solar started coming much later. But it cost more, but the cost was socialized across all the consumers in the jurisdiction area. The second thing that happened was that we also had, over these years, a very strong political commitment. And political commitment right up to the level of the Prime Minister, who time and again, or Prime Ministers who time and again said that the future of India lies in renewable electricity. Then there was the ratcheting up of goals. Periodically, the goals were ratcheted up, whether it was in terms of the amount of kilowatt hours of electricity that they would be bought, or it was in terms of the price competition and therefore the building up of a base of manufacturers who would make this happen. And what happened was that a series of mechanisms, in other words, we learned from what was happening. So a series of mechanisms were introduced, the fixed-in tariff, the feed-in tariffs, the setting up of the RE portfolio standards, then came the auctions, and then came the reverse auctions, and then came the reverse round-the-clock renewable electricity auctions. All of them contributed to the reduction of prices of electricity, to the point where we now have renewable electricity which is less than the cost of new fossil fuel electricity. So I come back to the first question. Will all future electricity be based on round-the-clock renewables, which is coal and wind and storage? Maybe it will, but that's in the future. Right now we are looking at the kinds of interventions that help us move ahead. We're looking at the kinds of interventions which help us move ahead and achieve this goal of upscaling. How do we do that? What are the kinds of issues? The first issue that hits us all is that of land. When you go to a bank and want to create a renewable electricity plant which is round the clock, the first issue that faces you is, where will I get the land? Do I have to go out and buy this land wherever? If that is the case, then I make a small packet of land. Then I come to Power Grid and with folded hands and ask them to make a transmission line. They say, well, okay, we will. But remember, it takes hardly 2 years to set up a renewable energy project. It takes 3 years plus to make the transmission line. So you've got no evacuation for at least a year after the construction of the plant. It would help if we had pockets of land. Now, several states have created such pockets. Gujarat has created a pocket in Khavda. Rajasthan has created a pocket in Badla. Karnataka has created a pocket in No, not near Billari. What is the name of the place? No, not Kadapa. I'm forgetting the name. Now the issue is that good enough? I was talking to Mr. Srivastav earlier, and we came to the conclusion that one of the greatest problems is that if it is all located in one place, then any weather condition related problem will lead to the entire area. For example, if a cloud comes, as it did earlier in 2024, if a cloud comes, the entire area does not produce electricity. That greatly affects the grid. What it implies is, therefore, we need a diversity in the land pockets or packets that are made available for setting up renewable energy. You need them across the country, and a national grid helps move electricity from one state to another when the need be. And within each state, you need to do it in several places. You need these land packets in several places so that any one of them, if it goes out, the others can still produce electricity. But more importantly, how do states provide this electricity? How do states provide this land? Remember Singur. We had a problem because there was only one model that came in people's minds, which was that we acquire the land and transfer it, in that case, to a car manufacturing facility. In this case, we would acquire land and transfer it for renewable energy. But that's not the only way. I ask you to remember what happened in Tamil Nadu when wind energy came up. Some of you will remember. Initially, whole plots of land were bought. But then only the places over which the windmills were set up were bought, the footprint and the roads connecting. And then people said, the farmer said, why do you buy this? Why don't you lease the land from us? And therefore, they got a revenue income, a stream of income from the electricity sales that were made by the developer as a result of the investment. In other words, the owners of the land continued to get benefits and were shareholders in the benefits. To me, this is a far more attractive option than that of acquiring land. What it also does, if the state set out here are the land packets, it enables Power Grid to draw transmission lines from those places to the places where the nearest high power grid or the load center is. You can do grid extension planning if the land packets are evolved in the beginning. And the third issue, so the first issue was land, the second issue was transmission lines, the third issue is money. Even though the renewable energy round the clock, renewable electricity round the clock is available at prices less than 5 rupees per kilowatt hour, less than the coal power stations, the first cost, the investment cost, is double the cost of investment in coal power. A 100 megawatt coal power plant would cost what, 900 crores? An equivalent plant to provide an equivalent amount of electricity at 5 rupees per kilowatt hour based on the tenders that were done would cost 1920 crore rupees. 900 and 1920. This tells you the challenge. Now, if you're doing 5%, 10%, 20%, 40%, we can do it. I mean, twice the amount of money is no big deal for a country like India. But when you go to scale, today 15% of our investment is in the electricity sector. That goes up to 30%. That's large. You can almost hear the sucking sound coming out of the other sectors as you move towards it. Is there a way? let me suggest a way. It's only one, there could be more. Remember that renewable energy projects get ready in 2 years. Then you have 1 year for the payments to start coming back. I noticed Pankaj is here, who has a huge amount of experience by lending money to renewable energy projects through Tata Cleantech, and understands when the money starts coming back. Now, what you can do at that point of time is, and I'm looking at you, Pankaj, is to create huge pots of money from local investments. My investment, your investment, our pension funds. And provide these as bonds to the renewable energy projects after the 3rd year. Because now you've got a history of getting money and how much money and who you will get it from, all that is clear. It also then allows the project to pay back the investment loan. And that investment loan to be used by somebody else, and therefore a return in 3 years means that that same amount of investment money is used twice in the 7-year period as it would otherwise. But what it involves is creating this bond market with national domestic money. It also greatly reduces the vulnerability of exchange rate that occurs, because the rupee to dollar exchange rate adversely affects, because you're getting paid for electricity in rupees. If you raise the money in dollars, then there is a mismatch, especially over long periods of time. But over periods of time of 2 to 3 years, that can be managed. It can be added to the capital cost. I hope that I have been able to share with you both the kind of experience that we have had in building the renewable energy capacity, as well as in the kinds of challenges that we face as we go ahead. I once again thank the Global Clean Energy Summit for this opportunity, and all of you for being such patient and kind listeners. Thank you very, very much.